So I want to welcome you all. This is the final Zoom discussion of this novel 20th annual JCC Metro West New Jersey Jewish Film Festival. My name's Abby Meth-Cantor, and I am co-chair with Andrea Bergman and Joni Cohn of the festival, which was founded by Karen and Herb Ford. As most of you know, we already had a very healthy ticket sale. We had healthy ticket sales to the festival, which was scheduled to start March 19th, when we were forced to change plans. It's taken an enormous amount of logistical work, mostly on the part of our wonderful festival director, Sarah Diamond, to get this event up and running, and responses from many of you viewers have told us that overall it's been a great success, and we've managed to preserve the chief aim of the festival, which is to bolster and enrich the cinematic culture of our Jewish community. The outstanding roster of films presented, and most that were originally scheduled, have been sent, have been shown via your computers, is due to the efforts of our festival committee, especially our astute festival curator, Vicki Jacobs, and of course, Sarah Diamond, our tireless, talented director. So our gratitude to them all, and a big thanks to all our sponsors, including Care One, our lead sponsor, for helping to ensure that this cultural community treasure continues and thrives. Thanks also to our friends at the JCC of Central New Jersey, our new partner in presenting quality Jewish films to the community. And today, special thanks to sponsors Sarah Ann and Robert Sanders, and to our community partner, Temple Shari Tefillo Israel, for our, you'll have to do this, closing night film, Crescendo, which we are discussing this morning. We suggest, again, as I said, choose speaker view, and if you have questions, please enter them into the chat box, and please put only questions and as succinct as you can in the box so we can review them and get them to our guest this morning. So now I'd like to introduce Dror Zahavi, who is now in Germany, working on a project, but he was born in Israel, and after completing his education, he won a scholarship to study directing at a prestigious film school in the German Democratic Republic. After returning to Israel, he worked as a film critic, and in 1991 moved back to Berlin to build his career as a director of film and television, in which he has earned numerous awards and accolades. His first full-length feature film, 1992's The Visitor, is about a young Israeli who comes to Germany shortly after reunification and finds himself in a Kafkaesque setting. In 2008, his film Sof Shavua B'Tel Aviv, known in English as For My Father, about a would-be Palestinian suicide bomber who unexpectedly falls in love with a Jewish woman in Tel Aviv, received the Audience Award at the Moscow Film Festival, won the grand prize at the Sofia International Film Festival, and was nominated for 7 Israeli Ophir Awards, Israel's Academy Awards. Mr. Zahavi shot München 72, Das Attentat, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, which was about the massacre of the Israeli athletes at the 1972 Olympics in Munich. He continued working extensively in television, scoring many honors, including a nomination for the International Emmy Award. Crescendo, the movie we're discussing, it was presented at the 2019 Munich Film Festival, and at that year's Berlin Brandenburg Jewish Film Festival, it received the recommendation for the best German film with a Jewish theme. And at the Festival of German Film, it won the Rheingold Audience Award. It had its theatrical release in Germany in January 2020. So first, let me say hello to Mar Zahavi. If you'll say hello to everybody, you'll come on the screen. There you are. Boker Tov for us. Guten Abend for you, I suppose, where you are.
Can you hear me? Because I just saw that I was muted.
Oh, now we can hear you.
Okay.
All right, everybody here, put a thumbs up if you can hear, and we're good.
Yeah, so Abby, it was the nicest introduction I've ever had.
Oh, thank you. Really, my first introducer award.
Yeah, and so, yeah, a lot of details that even I forgot already.
Well, Thanks, Sarah, for passing all the good information along. So
Yeah.
it's very interesting. Your career has been very interesting. So our question usually, for most films, the first question is what inspired you to make this film? I think a lot of us are familiar with the fact that there have been efforts. This Crescendo is a fiction feature, but there have been efforts to bridge the dissensions, to erase the dissensions, or at least minimize them through music, through combined orchestras of Palestinians and Israeli Jews. And the most famous was has been, I think, arguably the West Eastern Divan Orchestra, which was founded by conductor Daniel Barenboim.
And Edward Said.
And Edward Said. So I'm asking you, is this or other such efforts, were they the direct inspiration for the film? And how did you deviate or adhere to the messages or the outcomes of those actual life experiments?
Well, you know, it is a question that I have to answer very often. It is connected, of course, with my biography. I grew up in Israel. I went to the Israeli army. I came back to Israel in the 90s. I didn't find work. My whole life is actually connected to the Israel-Palestinian conflict. And this is maybe the biggest wish that I have, that this conflict will come in my lifetime to an end. So it is quite obvious why I did such a film. And the reactions are very different. It's really.
Okay. So you've worked quite a bit in Germany, and as you said, and Crescendo is actually a German film set mostly in Austria. Can you discuss a little bit more the whole idea of the conductor, Mr. Spork, the Maestro Spork's attitude toward his Nazi parents, and how that affected his approach to the conflict between the musicians, among the musicians, and how your being an Israeli affected maybe your other personal and professional experiences in Germany?
Well, the character of Spock came, of course, to the script because it was a German production, and we had to create a German relation. Yes. So in order not to make Spork just a mediator that is connecting between sorry, I just got a message. So in order to create a character that is having conflicts and having a depth, I tried to make out of him someone who is very extremely on the other side, someone that can give an example of something that was in Jewish subconsciousness, and of course, in reality, the biggest enemy, a conflict that was that my parents' generation didn't think that it can be solved, which means to have good relationships to the Germans, that will be an example for the Israelis and Palestinians to show them that even such conflicts that are based on the greatest hatred and the great catastrophe that ever happened can be solved and can be changed, and so that this conflict of Israel and Palestine also can be solved. I know that this is, I'm telling you about the background. Of course, the character is much less placative than than the way I'm describing it now, but this is what we thought when we wrote it. So it had to have, because Abby, you said correctly that that it is a little bit, the whole story was inspired by the orchestra of Barenboim and Said. And the character, and Barenboim himself was a conductor, a Jewish conductor that came from Argentina. So we wanted to make the character of the conductor a little bit similar to the character of Barenboim. Although during writing, I saw that we are getting far and far from Barenboim because we needed someone with a lot of heart and a very warm character, and not like Barenboim.
Yeah.
I hope I could answer all, because it was a very complex question.
Well, it's a complex gathering of people and background. So it's not easy to give a full, you did very well.
Yes, but you asked also about my part as an Israeli.
Yes.
Inside. Yes, this I forgot already. Well, it is a little bit more complex than to say it is a German film. Of course, officially it is a German film because it was, the production came from Germany, the money came from Germany, and in the film industry, film is being defined by the origin of the money. Yes, so but actually we shot in Israel. I'm an Israeli. All the orchestra came from Israel. So beside two actors, everybody were Israelis. So I know that officially it is not, it doesn't count as an Israeli film, but it is a film made by Israelis and about an Israeli item. So among us, I mean, we are all connected to Israel. I wouldn't say this sentence now if I would be in a film festival in Kazakhstan, but with people of the Jewish community that knows what kind of linkage we have to Israel and connection. It is a little bit, it hurts me a little bit when you say that this film is only a German film. Yeah? It is more complex than that.
In line with that complexity, how did you, well, overall was the, what was the response, and what kind of response in Israel as opposed to Germany or other countries?
Well, to tell you the truth, in Israel, nobody saw the film because one of the fewest countries in the world that didn't buy the film was Israel. And yeah, we live in very complicated times, yes. And so, but in the world, and the film was shown already in spite of Corona, because we had our release on the 15th of January, and in the beginning of March, the film stopped. So first of all, I want to thank everybody that saw the film, because you can't imagine what kind of contribution you make by watching films and going into virtual festivals for our industry. That is really, the crisis is being felt all over the places in the world. Yes, so also the way of the film in festivals in the world was stopped, yes, in March. It is just now, last month, I had 2 discussions also with Jewish film festivals in America that made it the way you do. And there are some others coming up, but the normal festivals, they just postponed the activity to next year. And it is in a lifetime of a film, it is the death penalty for a film, and it hurts me so much because I really think that this film is important, especially in those times, that people will see the film all over the world. I would wish to show it also in Israel. So this is the history of the film a little bit, that was interrupted and came to a sudden end because of the epidemic that we had.
Like a lot of other things, yeah.
Yeah.
Linda Ariel, who's one of our participants, just wanted you to talk a little bit more about why you think Israel didn't get the film, didn't purchase the film.
Well, this is of course a speculation now. I don't know, it is easy to say they didn't like the message, but I don't really think so, because it is not an establishment or an institution that buys the film or not. It is always a private distributor that buys the film. But I think that the spirit in Israel in our days is like this, that an investor that buys a film for, it's not a fortune, but it is for them big money, also, even if it is just something like, I don't know how much. He estimates the market in Israel, and he estimates that that people are not willing to see a film with such a message in Israel in our times, and that's why I think they don't buy it. I don't think that it is a governmental conspiracy. I think that it is an analysis of yes of the market in Israel and the spirit that goes in Israel. I mean, I'm very sorry, but I do think that there is a large part of the population that will go to see this film, and I still do believe that the majority of the people in Israel, even if they themselves don't know it, they are for peace. I think there are really crazy times right now in Israel where people lost the north and are very involved in contradiction emotions like hate, love, and nationalism, and that's why they come to different, in my eyes, wrong conclusions. But we shouldn't forget that only 20 years ago, 25 years ago, when Rabin was alive, everything looked quite different, and it can be, I hope and I think, can change again as fast as it changed to the other direction, back to the direction, if there will be someone that really wants it. And this is also what I wanted to show in the film. We don't have to love each other. We don't have to see the Palestinians as our brothers and sisters. We just have to get along with them. And that's all.
Yeah. Thank you for that. A little hope never hurt, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. There are a couple of questions from two of our participants. Sarah Ann Sanders wanted to know, how did you decide? Obviously, this had the crescendo works to a crescendo, which is a murder. Which leads me to my other question, but let's talk about that first. At some point you had to decide whether one of the Palestinian musicians would be killed or one of the Israeli Jewish musicians would be killed. And Beverly Riley wanted you to discuss the suspects and the motives behind Omar's murder. So that's kind of a similar question, just talking about how you chose the ending and what really happened in the context of your film.
Well, this is really a very interesting question because I got involved in the in this project twice. Once it was 2013 when Arthur Brauner was the producer. He died 2 years ago. He was 100 years old, and he offered me the script. And I read it, and the script was started with a bomb being put under the Conductor stage, and a lot of orchestra members have been injured, and 2 of them were killed. Jews, and it came out that the bomb was put by a Palestinian member of the orchestra because he was jealous on Laila that had a love affair with Ron. This was the story there, and I told him that I can't do this kind of a film. 2013 it was. And to show again that the Palestinians are the terrorists, and that the Palestinians, even if it is not a political motivation, they are primitive, and because of jealousy, they don't care to blow up in the air 50 people. So I asked him that, I told him that I'm willing to do the script if I will have the chance to rewrite it. And he didn't agree. He wanted to have the film as he thought about it. And so I left the project 2013, and I came back at the end of 2017 when his daughter took the project and offered it to me again. And I told her I have the project already, and I'm not willing to do it under those circumstances. And she said, you can do with the script whatever you want. So I rewrote it with a friend, and it was really a major question: who's going to die, or what is the best way to show it? Yeah, and there was actually we didn't hesitate it for a second. It was clear for me that the death of a person there shouldn't be because of a direct because of the guilt of someone else, but it has to be an accident, and to tell you the truth, we chose Omar because we wanted to show also how fragile the whole situation is. That the people that get together, the people that built already some kind of relationships, some kinds of what do you call it? To trust each other. Yes, that when you think that this group that learned to listen to each other and to act with each other, that this situation is so fragile that an accident happens and everything breaks together and breaks apart, and they come back to their old superstitions and all on those thoughts that they start the journey with. That's why we chose Omar, because we could give Laila the the mission at the beginning of the film to take care of him, because the family relationships in the Arab sides, in comparison to the Israeli sides, are, because of tradition and because of way of living, the families are much closer to each other on the Palestinian side. And that's why it was easier for us to give Laila the mission to take care of him, and then to take the blame that she didn't do it well. That's why we chose him. But it wasn't the political thought.
There were some questions about whether there might have been a murder at the end because of the extremists, but it was an accident. It was an accident,
yeah. Yes. It was an accident. I get this question very often, that people didn't get it, yeah, and maybe something is missing there in order to make it clearer. But it doesn't have to do anything with the attentat that the neo-Nazis have been make on the Conductor. It is really a panic attack that those 16-year-old boy and girl felt when the Italian policeman talked to them, and they just ran away. And it was dark, and there was a road, so he was. It was an accident.
Say there's shades of Romeo and Juliet in there too.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
There was a question from Robert Grossberg about the meaning of the playing of Bolero in the airport, which I also had a question about. I think, again, some of the questions are overlapping. I know that your film Sof Shavua B'Tel Aviv, in a way, also dealt with the fact of Palestinians and Israelis getting to know each other as people, and somehow that transcends the conflict or the hatred between them. So I wanted to know how your attitude has changed. That film was 12 years ago. And it ties in, I guess, to what was the actual crescendo of Crescendo. Was it the negative or the wonderful Bolero, which is the crescendo piece of music of all time?
Exactly, yeah. Well, for the first, to the first part of the question, which is really interesting, there's a sentence in the film where the Conductor, there's a discussion after the two monologues of Laila and the young guy that is telling about his family and the Holocaust, actually telling the background of the conflict and the hatred. One of the extremist Palestinian guys tell him near the swimming pool, is telling, well, between Israel and Jews, there will never be peace. We hate each other. And no, they are my enemies. And the Conductor tells in the sentence, an enemy is someone whose story you don't know. This is what he tells him. And this is what I believe, that you hate someone or you recognize him as your enemy because you don't know a lot about him. The moment you know something about someone, it is very difficult to hate him because you might understand his narrative of his history. So it is true that also for my father, which was in a way much more consequent and much more radical in the construction of the characters, because it was a suicide bomber coming to the main market in Tel Aviv, already murmuring Allahu Akbar and pushing the button, and the bomb didn't functionize. So he had to stay one weekend in Tel Aviv because he couldn't go back. and he had to repair it in order to blow Israeli women and children on the market on Sunday. Yeah, so this was, of course, much more radical in the thinking, and nevertheless, he stayed 48 hours in Tel Aviv, had to hide, and met the creatures of the night and the neighbors and actually the people that he wanted to kill just 1 hour ago. And this knowing each other brought him to what happened at the end. Yes, but to tell you the truth, I don't think that this kind of a film could have been done today in Israel. We did this For My Father is an Israeli film that was supported by the Israeli Film Fund, and there is no chance that they will support such a film today. So this is the difference what you asked for. I tried to make a film that has as a basic, not so radical characters. I also understood that the radicalism of For My Father, you can't show it today. Nobody in 2007, when we did For My Father, it was interesting for people also in Israel to understand who are the people that blow themselves and in order to kill other people. Who are they? Why do they do it? Is their life not important for them? And this is what we try to do, to show that that they are not beasts and they are not, but to show that there are human beings behind the bombs also. Now in the world, this is something that nobody is interested in. There are beasts, and there are, and they don't have any stories. And to tell you the truth, I'm also there. I can't tolerate anymore suicide bombers. It doesn't matter where they are. It is not that I tolerated them 2007, but 2007 went in my head stories, this story of a person coming to Tel Aviv to make a suicide, and he's stuck there, and he can't go back, and he can't blow himself in the world. What happened with him? Yeah. Now people don't have this tolerance of hearing and seeing such stories. They want to have it clear. That's why in Crescendo, I picked a subject and characters that are smoother, that are not so radical in the conflicts. They have from the beginning common interests. All of them are musicians. They have the interest of working with the conductor, which is very famous. They have this interest of this concert. All of them are actually on a much more solid ground than it was in For My Father.
By the way, Ricky, I'm sorry. We show, Ricky Slezak reminded us that we showed For My Father in our film festival.
Oh, I'm happy.
And it was wonderful. It was remembered as a wonderful film, of course.
Yeah, and because Crescendo is a real success in film festivals. And For My Father, we won a lot of awards, and it was interesting because I won awards in Kazakhstan and in Bulgaria, as you said, but also in the States. In very important festivals, so it connected somehow people, but it was much more radical. I don't think that that today you could show a film about a suicide bomber in Jewish communities, and in Israel anyway not. But it is harder. That this is the development, unfortunately, of the last 13 years. That on both sides hatred increased and tolerance lost weight. So that's why we did it in Crescendo, smoother, and took a group of people that have the interest to be together, and they don't have to. And to your question about Crescendo, the music, well, you're right. Crescendo is the most popular and the strongest example in music for a crescendo, and because of
Bolero.
Bolero, I'm sorry, yeah, of Crescendo. And crescendo means in the music getting louder, of course, yes, but it means also growth. It means also to become bigger, to increase. And it was for me important to end the film with an optimistic sound of that, even though they are the camps, that they are separated again, and the wall is between them, they did grow up to be something else, and they will come back, even though that they won't be friends, maybe, but they came back. They will come back with a different. They are different after the journey.
I think Sarah has a question.
Yes, hi. Excuse me. So Eileen Manahan asked me to ask you about the musicians, the actors. Are they actually playing the music? She thought they were also terrific actors as well as musicians. Where did you find them? Were they members of orchestras? Were they musicians who were also actors? Did they audition as a membership in the movie's orchestra? So please explain.
Yeah, well, this is the main and maybe the most important decision of every director when you make films, music or musicals. Do you choose musicians or do you choose actors? You lose always something unless you're lucky or you make so many auditions like we did, that you find the right people that can do both professions. Well, for me, it was the main direction for me was, or the most important issue for me was the authenticity. And that's why I wanted to have real musicians, and I wanted them to come from Israel and Palestine, so that it will be really Jews and Arabs, and not, well, to tell you the truth, I had a lot of problems. I had the same problems that the conductor in the film had. I had a lot of Israeli Jews, a lot of them, yeah. Something like 300 came to the auditions, and we needed only 14. And I didn't have Palestinians because they were afraid of coming and working in an Israeli film. They couldn't come from the West Bank because they didn't have a visa, and all those problems led me also to the conclusion that, okay, maybe we will take Israeli actors that looks like Arabs. Yeah, nobody would have noticed it, but it would harm the authenticity of the film, and I didn't agree to do it. So we looked for a long time, and I made a lot of auditions in Europe and even in America, and especially in Israel, to look for Palestinian musicians. And at last we found them, although it was really like this, that some Palestinians that wanted already to participate refused at the end because of one, there was a booklet with the history of Palestine and Israel, and there was one line there saying, I didn't write it, but there was one line saying that at 48, the Palestinian flew from the villages and became refugees. Some Palestinians didn't participate in the film because of this line, just that you will understand. For them, they didn't fly away. They were deported. They were thrown out. So it was very, very difficult. And I'm very happy that you also feel like I do, that they did it terrific at the end. Most of them are great musicians. Some of them are playing in the Divan Orchestra of Barenboim or played there. Some of them are playing in the Israeli Philharmonic, which is one of the best orchestras in the world. All of them are playing in orchestras or are music students, so they are really great musicians. And it was a lot of work with them about acting in front of the camera, which was worthwhile because they are doing it really very good. They are talented.
I wanted to just point out, thank you for that. That was very interesting. There was a particular scene, if you talk about getting people to know that being an enemy is someone you don't know, but it's true also with people who vicariously see others as enemies and to show their actual lives. So for at least for American Jewish audiences, I think it's still important that we see the lives of Palestinians as they live. And I think the one scene, and I'm just curious if this is something that's widely known, it wouldn't be known among us, when there's tear gas in the streets of Kalkalia and the young woman cuts an onion and sniffs the onion. The fact that she would know to do that in order to, I guess, create tears to wash away the tear gas, to me was so dramatic and showed so much what her life is like. So
that's true. Yeah, they know it because they grow up with tear gas, and as you probably know, it was spread also in the demonstration of the Arabic Spring all over the Arabic world, when in Cairo and everyone, they were throwing onions from the balconies to the demonstration so that people will breathe the onion because it helps against the tear gas. Yes, but it is really for me when I wanted just to show the difference between how you grow up in Tel Aviv and how you grow up in Kalkilia in the West Bank, and how peaceful it is in Tel Aviv, and although she doesn't participate in the demonstration, she just want to play. Yes, but it is yeah.
Tear gas finds everybody, right?
Yes. now also in Jerusalem. Yeah.
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 I was also want just to go back to your players, to your cast. How was it working with Peter Simonoff? And he's from what I understand, a very prominent actor, film and stage actor. And how did that work out? How was how were the dynamics between him and these young musicians?
Yeah, this is really a special story. He's one of the maybe most famous actors in Germany. He's an Austrian guy, yeah, but in Germany and in Austria, but he won 3 years ago the European Film Award, and he liked the script very much from the beginning, and he liked it because he liked his character, which was bigger at that time. Yeah, the story between him and his half sister that grew him was a little bit brighter. Yeah, and he liked it very much. I took it out from the script because I thought that it is an issue that is not playing a major role in the story, and we had to come on to a certain time of to a certain length of a film. So I succeed to convince him, and then 2 weeks before the beginning of the shooting, he wrote me at 6 o'clock in the morning an SMS telling me that he's not going to participate in the film because he can't speak English, and he's 72, and he, as a conductor, I don't know if you know, but conductors are giving the rhythm with the left hand and are talking to the orchestra with the right hand. And he said that with 72, he can't make in both hands different movements. Yeah? Crazy. So I picked several examples of conductors like Bernstein and everybody that they conducted only with their eyes. They didn't do anything, yeah, because, and I told him, Peter, you have such a charisma. You don't have to do anything. You know, they will understand you. The orchestra, if you just talk, if you just look at them. So it was, but I understood that he was afraid. He was afraid of this role that he had, and he was afraid. Basically, I think because he understood quite late that the film is not about him, and he is a huge personality with a huge ego, and he suddenly understood that the conflict is not between in his character, but the conflict is between the Jews and Palestinians, and that he is actually only the mediator that is bringing them to something. But so he wanted to quit 2 weeks before the shooting, and I sat with him. He wrote me this at 6 o'clock in the morning. We had the fittings at 8 o'clock. So I went where he was in a hotel room and I was in my apartment. So we met at 7 o'clock in the morning, and I tried to explain him that this film is not about any of the persons. It's also not about me. That we are, all of us, we are working for a message. We're working for, as an ensemble, to put out a message in the world, and this message is so important that everybody of us should give everything that he can in order to support it. This convinced him. So actually he gave up a renommee of playing a character where he's got cancer and he has to fight against it, and I don't know, and just putting the stage, giving the stage for the young people and their conflicts. And he did it marvelous. Yeah, I think he's a great actor. He's playing in the Burg Theater in Vienna. That counts as the best theater in Europe. And he's there already for 30 years, I think. And we are still friends and write sometimes from time to time to each other. It was for me a great experience with him, to work with him.
That's wonderful. And I think we have to end on that note because it was such a beautiful note.
Mm-hmm.
Use the expression, a beautiful chord of hope and potential harmony. Unless you want to tell us about any, I know things are difficult right now, but do you have any other projects in the works that will further send this message or be part of that entire effort to send such a message?
Well, I shoot now a series of in Germany about the American.
But I think on a big screen, it probably had an.
Sorry?
I think we got Zoom bombed.
Ah, okay. which is about the American GIs in Germany in 1951, and a love story between a German girl and a black GI on the background of racism in the American army, but also in the German society, and the difficulty to get together. So it was written before George Floyd, so, but it's really very, very actual now. So
Wonderful.
this is the project that I'm working on now.
Well, I think everybody would agree that this was a wonderful crescendo, a wonderful end to our our 20th annual film festival. And we thank you so much for providing the wonderful film that we could all watch, and for just enlightening us more about it. And thank you for your openness, and appreciate it. Thank you everybody for taking part. And Sarah, I'll let you have the last word, because
well, thank you, Dror, for joining us. We're so happy to have you. As I told you before, this was supposed to be our closing night film, and we would have had a dessert reception. So instead of a cookie, we got an interview with you, which I think is better, personally. Abby, thank you so much for your wonderful job moderating. I want to invite everybody here, if you want to continue the conversation. We're going to talk about Crescendo tomorrow at 1:15 at our JCC Metro West Film Discussion Group. You could also discuss any other film from the film festival that you'd like. I want to remind the sponsors to RSVP for the sponsor-only concert on Tuesday. And thank you all for joining us. And we look forward to watching many more films together in the future. Have a great day. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
thank you.
Thank
Bye
you.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Don't sigh, Sarah. This was great.
I didn't sigh.
It was so good.
I do need it.
A big smile.